Alright, the 2019 trade deadline is finally over, and here's my initial breakdown of the biggest winners of the trade deadline. Also, I won't be covering any trades that happened before February 3rd, like the Porzingis trade, because I just want to focus on the trades closer to the deadline. How's it going, folks? My name's Andy, and let's get started. The Portland Trail Blazers. The Blazers were relatively quiet at the deadline, and I expected them to do more, but they did make a good trade that I believe will help them. They got Rodney Hood from the Cavs in exchange for Wade Baldwin, Nick Stauskas, a 2021 and 2023 second-round pick. Baldwin wasn't even in the Blazers' rotation, and Stauskas is clearly not as good as Rodney Hood. I think Hood's been underachieving this year, but that's mainly because the Cavaliers suck. It's a clear upgrade for the Blazers at their backup guard position, and he's a legitimate scoring threat off the bench. Portland is currently bottom 10 in the league in bench scoring, so Hood can definitely help with that. They also swapped Caleb Swanigan for Skal Labissiere from the Kings, basically swapping two young, underachieving players getting limited minutes, hoping they could develop on another team. Speaking of the Kings, they were also winners. They were able to get Alec Burks from Cleveland and Harrison Barnes from Dallas. They didn't give up much, only Iman Shumpert, who had a hot start but now he's back to being Iman Shumpert. They also gave up Zach Randolph, who hasn't played all season, and Justin Jackson, a good young player who was probably the biggest loss for them. But I think both Burks and Barnes will flourish in the Kings' fast-paced system, and the Kings could afford to eat up Barnes' contract. In Dallas, Barnes had a good couple seasons, but he never really fit into their style of play. The Kings, on the other hand, play at the third fastest pace in the league, and that's better suited for Barnes' game. It's clear that they're trying to make a final push to the playoffs, and looking at the landscape, they could very well sneak in as the 8th or 7th seed. If Barnes shows up and plays well, they'll have the cap space in 2020 to maybe re-sign him, depending on how much he wants. Now, the 7th or 8th seed is not that impressive, but it is for the Kings. Nobody expected them to be even close to the playoffs before the season started, and even if they make it as a low seed, that would be amazing. The Sixers and Clippers are both winners. I made a previous video talking about this trade in more detail, so if you haven't seen it, you can go check that out later. Both teams won this trade because the Clippers were able to get more assets and picks to rebuild, specifically the 2021 Miami first-round pick. They also weren't going to re-sign Tobias to a massive contract this summer anyway. The Sixers also won because they got a borderline all-star and they're looking to compete right now, and didn't really give up that much for him, besides the picks, which don't have an immediate impact. The Sixers also traded away Markelle Fultz for Jonathan Simmons and a top 20 protected 2020 OKC first-round pick. It's not a huge deal, but we've known for a while that the Sixers already gave up on Fultz. Simmons has not been good this year, but he could play, and they need guards off the bench who could actually put on a jersey and play. On the other hand, the Clippers also made a sneaky good move by flipping Mike Muscala for Ivica Zubac and Michael Beasley. Zubac is a young, athletic 21-year-old big man who's shown a massive improvement this year. He's averaging over 8 points and 5 rebounds a game in about 16 minutes a night for the Lakers, but Laker fans will tell you that he's been a pleasant surprise. The Clippers got a steal, and Zubac is the type of player they want as they go into a full rebuild. The Milwaukee Bucks. They gave up Thon Maker for Stanley Johnson, another trade involving two young players who needed a change of scenery. But then they packaged Johnson along with Jason Smith and a bunch of second-round picks for Nikola Mirotic. This is a fantastic trade. Mirotic fits perfectly with the Bucks, a legit three-point threat who showed he's capable of guarding other bigs in a pinch. Thon wasn't getting any minutes, Jason Smith wasn't getting any either, and although it's a lot of second-round picks they're giving up, it's worth it for a player like Mirotic. He's going to be a 2019 free agent though, just like most of the Bucks roster, and I'm not sure if he's going to be a priority to re-sign. Either way, the Bucks look like they're going all in this season. It might be the best chance they've ever had to win the title since Kareem was there. The Toronto Raptors. Now, I've read a lot of people's opinions, and I'm not sure if this is a complete win. Some would argue that Jonas was having a better season than Gasol, and that's kinda true. Jonas also plays pretty well against the Sixers, who they might see in the playoffs. But Gasol is still the better overall player. He's much older, he's 35 years old, and he's clearly regressing. But on the Raptors, he won't have the pressure to be the first or second option anymore. Gasol's efficiency has taken a nosedive in recent years, but whenever he's played with better players in the past, he always elevates his own game. He's been forced into the primary or secondary scoring role, and that's not his game. I think he's a perfect fit in Toronto. The Raptors have made it clear that they're going all in this season because who knows what could happen over the summer. Just like the Bucks, this might be their best chance to win the title since the franchise was created. Delon Wright was also part of this deal. Wright hasn't been phenomenal, but he's been a decent rotation player. One thing I've heard people say is that the Raptors gave up 2 young players for a very old Marc Gasol, and now they have no young assets. But they really didn't have any to begin with. Jonas and Delon are both almost 27 years old. It's not like they're young prospects about to blow up. Let's say this trade wasn't made, I doubt the Raptors would want to keep them since their contracts are about to expire soon. And they'll be in for a decent payday that they probably couldn't afford. Another player involved in this deal was CJ Miles, who's been underperforming the entire season. I still think this trade was good, and it was something the Raptors had to do if they want to make that extra push to the finals. Also, they apparently gave away Greg Monroe for nothing in order to save money. Seems like a weird move to me because the Raptors roster is cutting thin. But at the same time, Moose has not been part of the rotation for the majority of the season. They must be trying to pick up some players from the buyout market. The Cleveland Cavaliers. The Cavs essentially traded away Rodney Hood in exchange for Brandon Knight's contract, a young player in Marquise Chris, and the Rockets' 2019 first-round pick. I think Marquise Chris still has potential. He hasn't had any chance to play meaningful minutes in Houston, but he had a decent couple years with Phoenix. He's only 21 years old, and on the Cavs, he'll have a much bigger opportunity. Brandon Knight's contract sucks, but the Cavs aren't contending anytime soon, and they did get Houston's first-rounder, which is a good consolation. It doesn't seem like a super win, but the Cavs are doing what every other rebuilding team should be doing, gathering young players who might have potential and some draft assets. The Indiana Pacers. The Rockets dumped Nick Stauskas and Wade Baldwin to the Pacers and sent them a second-round pick to take their contracts. Then the Pacers felt bad that Stauskas and Baldwin kept getting traded like 5 times in 2 days or something, so they waived them. At least they got a second-round pick from Houston for basically doing nothing. I guess that's a win. The Washington Wizards. They got rid of Otto Porter's ridiculous contract, which was a good move. He wasn't making the jump that they expected, and in return they got back Bobby Portis, who's on a very cheap contract, making only $2 million this season. And they got Jabari Parker, who has a team option for next season, and the Wizards have a choice to keep him or not. After this season, they could let him go to free up cap space if they decide that he's not worth keeping. I don't think this is a huge win for the Wizards, but they were able to get rid of a contract that many people thought was untradeable. Plus, Portis has steadily improved over the past 2 seasons, and Jabari seems like he's ready for a fresh start, after falling out of the rotation in Chicago. There's no downside to the trade for the Wizards. You could say that it hurt the Wizards' chances of competing in the near future, because Otto is the better player, but considering Wall's Achilles injury, they wouldn't be able to contend either way. Another trade they made was sending away Markieff Morris and his $9 million contract to the Pelicans for Wesley Johnson. They obviously made this move to save some money. Overall, I'm not sure what direction they're trying to go. Regardless, I feel like this deadline was a win for them solely because they got rid of Otto's contract and now they have more flexibility. The Orlando Magic. So, Markelle Fultz is finally gone, but out of every other trade at the deadline, this trade has the lowest risk and the highest reward. The Magic gave up Jonathan Simmons, who was arguably even worse than Fultz this year. They also gave up the 2020 OKC first rounder, which is top 20 protected, so I wouldn't say that's a huge deal either. Fultz, when healthy, has shown flashes of excellence. He might not ever live up to the expectations of a number 1 pick, but he could still be a solid starter and rotation player. He's still only 20 years old. And even if he never develops, the Magic didn't give up much anyway. Of course, the major question is his injury, and if he could ever recover from it. At the very worst, it's a neutral trade. At best, the Magic got a major steal. Anyway, that's all folks, that sums up my thoughts on the trade deadline. In my opinion, those teams were the winners at the trade deadline. I don't actually think there were that many losers. Even for the teams that didn't do so well, it's not like they got completely robbed. Anyway, let me know your thoughts on the video, and did I leave any winners out? Let me know in the comments. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time. Peace.